And yeah, so welcome. If you obviously you've got some first timers here, we've got some returning guys that haven't seen for a very long time. It just disappeared.
I was always online. I was attending the meetups through YouTube.
Yeah. But yeah, so just g'day. I hope you guys like it. Stick around. If you guys don't like it, definitely let us know. If there's any feedback or anything like that, it's definitely accepted. It's welcome. We want feedback. That's really what we want. So we definitely want to grow this group and make it bigger. So obviously we are proudly supported by our mate Pablo. Hudson Technology obviously provides us awesome room, and they also provide catering as well. Instinct Technologies catered the event tonight, so obviously thanks to Instinct. And we also finally Script Runner pays our meetup costs, which is awesome. If you're not aware of what Meetup's done lately, it's not cool. So we're definitely really happy with that.
And if you're not aware of what Script Runner does, check it out.
Yeah, check it out. We've got a previous stream up.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm just making sure I'm recording because I was a little concerned. Really, really cool. There's a previous video that's up on YouTube that you guys can go watch, and it's a really good demo of exactly what Script Runner does. It's really, really good. I definitely recommend you checking it out. News. PowerShell release candidate 2 has been released. If you guys, that's PowerShell 7. As you can see, I've literally wrote this in a second. We are going. PowerShell 7 will be GA at the end of this month. That's what.
January.
So.
Like January.
Yes, that's what they're aiming for. We'll see. This is the second release candidate, so there's obviously they fixed some issues there, which that's great. And obviously other news, shirts. We'll quickly.
T-shirts.
We'll quickly look at the shirts.
So what are you proposing with the shirts? We'll ask people on Slack if they're interested in getting a shirt.
Yeah, if you're interested, definitely hit us up. I'm going to probably order some once I can get a bit of an idea in terms of costs. So I thought got PowerShell. Actually, no, you still can't see that. Let me just zoom that right in.
You're getting more and more creative with these shirts.
Yeah, I know. Okay, now it's pixelating like crazy. But so essentially you got the Brisbane logo, and that's got PowerShell. Kind of analogy of got milk, but I just thought that would be that's just me. Yeah, very, very it's the exact same material that that my other shirt was. So yeah.
Shouldn't that variable be surrounding the curly braces just so it doesn't interpret the dot?
Wayne, it's for readability.
Oh, sorry,
okay. Yes.
You're also using aliases.
But it needs the question mark. You don't write where object. You're like. But essentially, that's the front of the shirt. Obviously, it's got our Brispug PowerShell profile prompt on the bottom, and then on the back, it's basically just saying, yes, I know PowerShell. So, and then obviously you can actually customize your bottom message. So if you want to say Michael's a douchebag, go right ahead.
And obviously that bar's not going to pass code review, but that's fine.
Yeah, that bar's not going to pass code review. So, but that's fine. You can customize it.
Yeah.
Can we convert the neck into a polo shirt, polo t-shirt?
You can, but it costs extra. This is literally the cheapest shirt you can get. So.
And what is the price difference?
So I think it's $20.
Just for the
Yeah. I think it's $20, but these guys the shirts are decent. So they're really nice. They're easy to wear. They the material. I've obviously had my shirt for a while now until Naomi started to ruin it. But essentially, it doesn't bleed. It does the stitching's fine. Everything's good with it. So it's actually really good quality shirts, which is better than our Zazzle ones, which,
I didn't mind those. If they were stitched, they would be fine.
Yeah, that's what I mean. If they were stitched, but the problem was that they I feel like they're gonna mine's turning. That the material's too heavy, so it kind of when you're in the summer, you're just sweating into that, and you're yeah. So that's the new PowerShell.
Hit us up on Slack.
Yep. Yeah, hit us up if you're interested. Obviously, the PowerShell Conference 2 book, we were talking about that, so you can go on to LeanPub. It actually made bestseller last week, which is kind of funny. I was actually really happy with it as well because a lot of people are getting on board with it, which is really good. So, PS. Just going to search PowerShell. So obviously, yeah, PowerShell Conference book 2. So it's about, it's 466 pages. So
Is that US or Australian dollars?
That's US. So all proceeds go to the on-ramp program. So essentially the on-ramp program is a scholarship program that's run for the summit. So basically people trying to get into IT pretty much get a free trip over there with the exception to things. So you guys remember Christian, who came to the user group? He's actually going over on the on-ramp program. So yeah, it's really, really, really awesome. And obviously these guys get the awesome opportunity to literally learn from the best. So
And if you work in security, you can drag the top slider to the right.
yeah,
If you
some
work in system administration,
yeah.
you can drag it to the left.
Well, one person actually, I was talking to Mark about like how it's doing, and one person actually donated $199 US.
Yeah, or is that how far you can
Yeah,
go?
they just went and then donated the max, which was quite like we were blown away. So
And for those people that are on a budget, how far to the left can they let you go?
I think it's
I'm not on a budget.
it's 60. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll just quickly go through the table of contents because I think so you can see here there's like tons and tons of content. So let me just zoom in so you guys can actually see. How do we?
What's the ball for the Windows open?
Who would use
Yeah, what is
Come
that?
on.
Nonsense.
So you've got a whole bunch of different stuff there with regards to what's actually within the book. There's so much content in there. It's pretty crazy.
That's not good.
So
So is the program for the rest of the year to run the chapter of that first session?
Yeah, pretty much.
there's a
Yeah.
lot of content in that book, and it's definitely worth recommending a read. And this is just based on the fact that I've edited it and I've learned so much. So
So that casting looks interesting. I've never really understood
casting.
it works.
I think, did I edit that one? I can't remember. I've edited so many, just kind of, but it's definitely worth a read anyway. So I know that they are going to make paperback copies, but
And there's
it's all.
two copies, there's 2 editions.
Yes, there's 2 editions. This is the second edition, but obviously there is a first edition as well. So something is missing.
Yeah, so when I downloaded it, it
Okay.
was 119 pages. Yeah, now I can feel more.
Yeah, we've been really hammering the yes. This is number 1. So we've been really hammering the pull request. So it's This is the very first one. So definitely cool. Definitely recommend to read. All right. Also,
Sorry, so volume 1 and volume 2 are an updated version?
they're completely different. So volume 1. Just to give you a bit of context with regards what the book is about. They take 30 SMEs in PowerShell, and you basically write a chapter on something. So essentially, it's a PowerShell conference in a book. So each year is going to be different to what the previous version or the previous edition is. So it's not any sort of revision or anything like that. It's a completely new book.
And it's not the content from the conference.
No, it's not. There is no content from the conference. It's a complete.
Really? I thought
Yep.
it is it would.
No, it's none of the content from the conference. This is a complete conference in itself. So, like for example, the stuff that I'm presenting is not anything to do with this. Even though I submitted it, but I was running out of ideas to things to submit. Anyway, so yeah, that's pretty much conference book. If you want more information, you can just hit me up on Slack. You guys got the Slack link? Cool. So you can just jump in Slack, hit me up, and then we can provide that info, which is really cool. Tip of the month. I literally kind of wrote this before, so I didn't really get a chance to test it. So does everyone know what the difference is between path and LiteralPath? This is something that is really important with file systems, and it's caught me out a lot. And Jordan, his pet hate is path as well. So essentially, when you're working with file, any sort of file-based command, whether that's test path, whether that's get item, get child item, remove item, I'm literally like new item. Actually, no,
New item.
no, yeah, it only has path. But essentially, LiteralPath is as it is. It is a literal file path. So essentially, if you have a string that contains square brackets or anything like that, it'll process as it won't actually do any sort of substitutions or anything like that. It basically is its physical path. It's just essentially just a definite string path. Anything goes. So it'll do wildcard substitution. So obviously I can't spell. So it'll do wildcard characters are permitted. So, and I like how like that one. So, and also will look up the current location in the current, it'll also do lookups in the location of the current directory that the current, that the prompt is currently in.
And it's not just wildcard characters, it's all special characters.
Yep, any special characters. So think of it as, you got a double quote string and a single quote string. So double quote strings will process your regex, will do all your substitutions. Single quote strings won't. This is the exact same thing. Very, very handy. So as a rule of thumb for myself and a few of the other people, I might use path in a build because I kind of don't know the entire literal path until I can actually find the actual file. But when there is an actual literal path, use a literal path. It's very important. And then, yeah, at the end of the day though, if it doesn't work, then you know the file's not there. So, yay. So that's the tip of the week. Hope you guys liked it. PowerShell Objects Explained. So I do have the slides will go up. So if you guys, it's really small. I do have a link thing down at the end, so you guys can have a look. But essentially, yeah, slides are all available. So I've got my GitHub sorted now since, yeah, it was an absolute mess. So yeah, alrighty. So obviously, yeah, we've covered all that. Okay, so let's quickly talk about. We're just going to quickly break down what is this whole concept of PowerShell objects. So what is a PowerShell object? Why is this process? Why is it important? Like why do we use PowerShell objects, and how do we use them? So I kind of just broke them down to three. This is going to be very demo heavy, so the slides are going to be fairly minor. But anyway, we'll keep going. So let's talk about the what. So what is an object? So I think before we talk about what a PSObject is and why we use a PSObject, I think we kind of need to take a bit of a step back and look at what an object is in terms of its own, in the definition. I kind of was thinking about the easiest way to kind of describe this in terms of obviously keeping it simple, but obviously somewhat relevant and short. So essentially, obviously PowerShell is an object-oriented language. It follows those kinds of principles. So an object is simply put, is just a grouping in memory of similar items. So think of it as if you have a pen, or let's say a set of glasses, you're going to have those specific attributes that describe that pair of glasses in terms of memory and methods. It's basically, I won't do that again. It basically is, will be grouped together. You're just basically grouping common items that those things use. So to create an object, you need a class. The best way to think of a class is a blueprint. So if you have, let's use an instance of a car. So if you're going to build a car, you need a blueprint to build that car. You're going to use it. That's a class. An object is a physical representation of that car. It's pretty much that. So let's go to my car. So like I said, so think of it, if we have a car, there's going to be common items on that car. So for example, the number of wheels, the engine type, the number of doors, the number of windows, the engine, the paint color, the body type. So is it a hatchback? Is it a sedan, wagon? You know, those kinds of things. Convertible. So all these kinds of things apply. Obviously, you know, numbers of seats. These attributes describe what the car is. Does that make sense? Everyone kind of on board with it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm going to be looking at Pablo mostly because. So what is a PS object? Well, do you guys, I was going to throw this question. Who here has that random bowl in their house that just has the most randomest items in it? So think of it as like, you know, you've got this button, you've got this ball, you've got this like remote that you don't know where it goes to. Like that is essentially what a PowerShell object is. It's a generic object.
Half a dozen of those balls.
Yeah. You've got a problem.
One in each room.
Yeah. So essentially, that's really what a PowerShell object is. It's just used to group common items together. Like it is just a common type that basically you can use to do different things with. It's just the generic object within PowerShell. It's great for that. So let's talk about the flavors. So there's two types. We got the first type, which is a PS object, and we have the second one, which is a PS custom object. So what's the difference? So obviously a PS object that was made available in versions 1 and 2. It's still available now. There's PS objects still around. And then you have PS object, PS custom object, which was introduced in version 3. Obviously, when PowerShell 3 as well, it introduced the ability to be able to actually use hash tables. So you can actually declare your object from a hash table rather than actually typing new object. So you can do really cool things like that. So let's take a bit of a look at the differences.
Is PS custom object an actual type? I thought it was just a type accelerator for PS object.
I thought it so as well. I actually didn't have it. I think you're right. I actually didn't get to like check, but I'm pretty sure you're right. I think.
It's either that or reverse, isn't it?
Yeah.
Something like that.
I think it is a type accelerator. So let's just go.
Does everyone know what a type accelerator is? Someone want to refresh my memory what they are?
So types.
It's like an alias for a type.
Yeah, it's just an alias for a type. Yeah.
I think PS custom object is a special one, and audit is also another special one.
Yes.
There's actually logic inside the PowerShell engine to handle them differently, but the vast majority of type accelerators are just aliases.
Right. So PS object, you think would be the type accelerator? PS custom.
No, I think PS custom object's a type accelerator.
I think it's the reverse.
Yeah.
I think PS
right.
custom object is
Yeah.
used to create a PS object.
Yep.
Yeah, right.
So
A longer alias.
yeah. So what we can actually do is we can actually see the performance. I'm actually borrowed your code from this because I was kind of smashing it out. So we can, obviously I've just got Wayne's
You're
code
all
here.
slow, that's why it's- yeah.
So essentially we're just going to be measuring the performance between the two. So you can actually see PS object is faster than PS custom object. It also helps if I can like spell. So essentially, let's just go ahead and run this. Can you guys read that from the back? Is that all right?
Yeah, that's good to know.
Okay. Oh, what? Okay, cool. I was like looking at it. I'm like, did I actually?
No one attacked us using measure for me read that, even though I know that
Oh, what the hell? It's great. Good start. I actually broke it.
they use my code. That's what it looks like when you run my code. I'm glad it's not red though, for a change. I'm so used to the red.
I wrote this and then I was like, yeah, this should be fine. And then I made changes and didn't test again. So what we'll do.
Have you defined server numbers? Not yet.
Did you select that?
I'm just going to rerun this and see if it. Well, no, it ran. I think it's. See if that works. No, can't call another expression. Why is that?
This list, you're mentioning server list.add, and at the top it's just.
Oh, yep, good spot. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Good spot.
Good problem.
Sometimes.
This is why you like test your demos like after you make changes.
And I think it would produce output as well, like because it's an array list. Yeah. Use generic lists. Yeah, use generic list. Generic list is faster than array list.
Yeah. So essentially here you
Any output. Maybe.
I think generic list is slightly faster.
Yeah, because it doesn't produce any output. Maybe that's the reason. Yeah.
So we'll just quickly look at the second. So basically, to do a PS object, it takes about 8.28 seconds to run, which is that's fairly decent for a 300,000. So let's go ahead and run PS custom object, and let's, yep, we'll just fix that bug there. Apparently we're opening command prompt. I don't even know how I did that. I just hit a hotkey and I opened it. It's so random. All right, so what we can do is we just go ahead and run that. Once we've done that, we can, oops, okay, got that. Yep, sweet. So we can go down here. Let's go ahead and run this code. So essentially here, we're going to do the same thing. So the first one was 8 seconds. The next one, once it comes back, as you can see, it's taking significantly longer. It takes 13 seconds. So I do think, yeah, so there is a performance difference between the two. And it's running the same code. So it's not in terms of, obviously if you've got bad code, you've got bad code, but at the same time, though, we're not making any changes to the actual logic itself. So,
are you able to do a get type on both of them? This one's what the type names are. So if you just run that PS custom object one, the PSObject example, standalone, and run a get type on it. No, so like it actually initialize, so just do like an empty hash table.
oh, okay, yep.
And then run get type on that.
Oh. Jeez. So it's, oh, no?
So that's a hash table.
Hmm.
That's interesting.
Anyway, we'll keep going because we can come back to that later. So
That would explain why it's faster, because hash tables are definitely faster than PS custom objects.
Yeah, I think it didn't convert into PSObject.
it casted it as a PS custom object. Yeah, we'll have a look at it later. So essentially, why? So why should we use PowerShell objects or PS objects? You can do really good things. So I'm just going to we can jump back in the demos. Okay, so the first set of the first demo I've wrote is a little bit of pseudocode. It's just more from the point of view explaining logic versus versus actually executing. It's just more for trying to show you guys easier or more efficient ways to write code. So let's just look at this example here. So we've basically got an array that we've declared from 1 to 8. And then obviously we're just iterating through that. I'm going to try, it's Control Shift plus. No, yep, Control Shift plus. Okay, I'm just going to go back one. Okay, so you guys can see that all right? Cool. So essentially we're just going to be doing we're just essentially doing something and do something. And you can see here we basically have we just got a random script that we're doing some stuff with. We're basically getting a username, we're putting that username in a variable, we're getting a description, again we're putting that in a variable, and then we're getting some information and we're going to a file, preferably with something there's something variable .exe, so whether it's 1 to not 8 .exe. Now we're going to do some random actions with that. So you can see in here, we've got start random function, we use a name. So again, we're just doing some sort of random command, some random work with it. And we're just going to append that value we're going to put that value into a variable. And then we're going to put all that information into a description. And we're going to append a random result into the description. So we've got our random result there, and then we're going to append that into our description. So you can see here there's a fair bit of string manipulation. We're putting stuff in places, and then we're just going to write that all out. You can do it that way. But there's other ways to do it. So this is really the why. So let's go ahead and refactor our code and make it a little bit easier to understand, a little bit easier to read. So the first thing that we've done here. Now we're going to talk a little bit about casting in the next few demos. So I don't want you to get hung up on it. I just want you to understand the why. So essentially here, what we're doing is we're declaring an object and we're putting all that information in an object. That's really what we're doing. We're basically grouping our common items together. And you can see here, within that, we can basically call our start random function. And rather than actually putting it in a variable, we're going to put it in our object. So into random result, that'll fill that data out. And then we're going to update the description. So that's the same, except we're updating a property versus an actual just a random variable. And then we can just return the entire object itself. So now we can refactor that code further, like we can obviously do splatting and things like that. But for the sake of this demo, I just want to explain to you that this is a really good example of being able to actually build an object that to do that kind of heavy lifting for you. So it keeps it nice and central. It makes it easy for you to follow along with your code. It's more readable. It's more maintainable. So that's a really good example. So in the second code block, yeah, like we said, we're grouping these items together. It just makes it much more readable. So let's look at another demo. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually use PSObject to glue our two different objects together. And this is one of the really cool things I love about objects or PowerShell objects. We can actually use it as a glue. So we're not basically, you can have, different things or whatever you want and then just bring them and glue them all together into one object. They will still retain their types, so there's no issues there, but it's just more for this, it's more for keeping everything, again, nicely grouped in memory.
I think the new object, which when you bring it in, and when you glue it in together, after the output, it doesn't retain its type. It would just be custom object.
Unless you specify, it's unless you explicitly specify type. So I'll show you what I mean.
What do you mean by glue together?
I'll show you. So what we've got here is got some mock functions. I don't want you to really look at the mock functions because let's just assume that they're legitimate. So essentially, we're going to be emulating get AD user and get mailbox. So here we can glue those two types together. So what we've done is we've declared our custom object. We've got get AD user. We've got the identity of test user 1, and then we've got get mailbox with the identity of test user 1. So if we can run that.
So those commands get issued to get actioned at that time.
Correct.
So we get
Yes, they'll get executed when you instantiate the object. It helps if I also load the mocks into memory. It also helps if I can actually come on. Can you?
Yes.
See, this is a learning experience for everyone.
Just click at the bottom and shift it up.
Oh, look at that. Okay, sweet. So we've basically created our objects. So let's have a look at them. So if we go type, I'm just going to clear the screen. I'm going to bring this up to the top so everyone can see it. I'm just going to use so you can see here we've got get AD user and we've got the mailbox, and you can see there's actually it's showing types. So essentially, if I actually specify the AD user property, we can see the information inside of that. So if we can run get type on it, it's going to do a get member. Essentially, you can see it's get AD user. Now that is a custom class. I'm just saying that's custom PowerShell classes. But I'm just trying to explain that in this demo here, you can see that we can glue our information together, and it's really advantageous in these situations because essentially what you're doing is you're creating. It makes your code a lot more easily maintainable and readable, because if you've got a single object that you're working with versus having all these random variables scattered everywhere, it makes it a lot easier to maintain. So let's go back to our code.
You also give context to the actual values. So because it's a PS object, you've got properties that tell you this is the name, this is the identity, this is the user principal name.
Exactly. And yes, it is exactly right. And that's basically a really good example of why. So we've obviously just glued two objects together. Now there is another way to do that, and that's where we can use select expressions. But that's for the next part. So let's head back to the slides.
And obviously you can pipe those group objects together to a select object. And
You can do whatever you want. Yeah, yeah, that's exactly right. So essentially, you can pipe it and start working with it. Now, provided obviously it can take that type, but like let's say for example, you need to back all that information up to CLI.XML, you just pipe it to export, CLI.XML. Or if you needed to use it for CSV, is probably a bad idea because of the flat file structure. But like, obviously, if you need to serialize it as JSON or things like that, again, it's the same thing. So it's very, very handy. So how? Like I said, there's not many slides. So I shouldn't have done that because now I've got to get back out of it. So how do we use it? Like, how do we actually create PowerShell objects? So we're going to go through all the ways of actually how to use it. So you guys get to see all the magic and wonderful ways of doing it. So let's go ahead and have a look at it. So the old school way. So who's here familiar with the old school way of new object, type name, PSObject? Who still uses it today? Yeah.
I'm not a PowerShell guy.
Yep, that's totally fine. Like, it's totally fine. That's like it's an interesting conundrum. Is that like I only found out the other day, like was it a couple of months ago when we were having a chat when there was a discussion on Discord about why you don't use add member anymore, and I'm like, but I love add member. So it's really, really quite interesting. So let's look at the old way of creating a PowerShell object. So obviously the traditional thing you can do is you can create your object, you instantiate it with new objects, and then you can add your members. So obviously here we've got new add member, member type no property, name, and the name is Reliant Robin. And then in the description here we've got used by comedians and rocket scientists alike, the Reliant Robin was a really terrible car. It has 3 wheels, it has 4 windows, and it has a terrible engine. So essentially, we can obviously, you guys, this is the way we usually, the old school way of doing it. We can go ahead and create our object. I'm just going to bring up the things. I'm going to clear the screen so you guys can see it. And you can see in here, there's our object. We've got our name, we've got our description, we've got some wheels and some number of windows and things. So that's pretty much the way that we used to do it. Yep.
One question: does this create? I forgot about this, but does this create an ordered object, or it can, like, if you're creating multiple objects, would it just?
It creates one single object.
Yeah, but then let's say if you're creating multiple objects, like let's say if you're done for each, then would it?
You need to you need to reinstantiate the object. So think of it as a single object, single piece of memory. But if you're creating a list, or an array, you need to reinstantiate the object and then add it to that instance or to that item in the array. Does that make sense?
It's been a long time since I've done this, but there's something around the process block in a function that allows you to not have to do that or something.
First you have to create a class, then instantiate to a particular object.
I like.
No, sometimes the order of these objects, or sometimes the order it varies. Unless you specify ordered in the hash table.
Yes.
But then I'm not sure whether what would be the equivalent when we add a member, like in this method.
It should be preserved, because you've done it in that order there, and I swear PS custom or PS objects, the both properties are ordered by when it was actually added.
Right.
But like what you're going through, if you've got it in a for each loop, you have to initialize your PS object each time you want to output it. You can't say, hey, I want to use this one here, and you have to actually say, create this PS object, add these no properties, and then output that.
Yeah, I get that.
So you were saying that
something clever in the process block. It's been a long time since I've written PowerShell too.
Well, the process block is run
each time
as the input is actually sent there.
Yeah. So if you're if you're piping an array into a process block, essentially the process block will get repeated each time that array item. So if you've got, like, let's say you've got 5 array items, it'll repeat 5 times. Yes, in the pipeline.
Executed once and end is executed once. Process is executed the number of items passed.
Yeah. Did you?
Correct me if I'm wrong. The way classically, the way we define the object, in object-oriented program, we define a class.
Yep.
Then we instantiate it.
Yes.
Then we are defining the objects.
Yes.
But here you are not defining any class.
No, because PSObject
is a class
itself.
Back in
it's
PowerShell
generic.
version 2, there was no classes. And this is the way we did it back in PowerShell version 2. And it wasn't until PowerShell version 5 they brought in classes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we had to do it like this, and it was really horrible.
That's what I was wondering, what is
Yeah.
happening?
The beauties of predefining PS objects itself, so you can actually define a PS object to a specific name, add like script members and stuff like that. So whenever you create that same PS object, inherit that information. So that's very similar to that class where you define that actual class, but traditionally with PS custom objects or PS objects, it's whatever you created at the time.
It's whatever goes. You can add whatever you want, really.
There's no guarantee with PS objects and PS custom objects that they'll all have the same number of properties. Even if they're in the list.
Exactly, yes. They might be the same type, but they can do different things. So
you
it's
could have a car,
yeah.
You're treating these like cars. There could be a list of cars, PS objects,
Yeah.
and then one could randomly not have wheels.
Yeah, exactly.
The property will still be there.
Pretty poor API though.
Yeah.
Or has a flat tire like mine. So essentially,
Sorry, just on the properties. I mean, there's no properties and script properties. I've never fully understood. Even though I've always used no properties, I never understood why what the different properties were, what the choices were.
Scripts can be generated from other things. So you can have a script property that's generated from a value of another node property. So say, for example, you have wheels 4, you could have something that's on there that might be like bolts, which is 4 times the amount of bolts.
Such like a calculated property.
Pretty much.
yeah,
And it only calculates within that object for no properties? Yeah. Okay.
Well, it can access any other variable, but
Yeah.
if you wanted to calculate it from another thing from that PS object, it can be any of the properties it has.
yeah.
And does it recalculate?
Yeah, every time you call it,
Every time
it's
you
a
call it?
dynamic
Okay.
type.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can do methods as well, but I've never seen many people use methods in a PS object.
Okay.
I used it and I was like, okay, that's good to know, and now I forget it. So, yeah. Anyway, so let's keep going. Obviously, add member is not recommended since it's slow. However, at the end of the day, though, if you are going to use it, it's like if it's once off, it's fine. Like I
And
don't.
also PowerShell version 2.
Yes.
If you're going back below PowerShell 5,
Yeah.
you're here.
Yeah, exactly. So really, and the thing with add members, it's kind of a little bit, so it's kind of that derelict leftover from PowerShell 2. But at the end of the day, though, there are still many ways for you guys to be able to get around that. So don't panic. So obviously, there's alternatives. So we're going to talk about PS custom object name for new items. So a lot of guys are like, what? What's going on here? So what we can do, instead of actually using add member, we can basically instantiate our object, or we can just use select object. So you can instantiate an object for new items, and you can use select object to kind of go, okay, I need to filter out this, or add this. So that's, the differences. So let's talk about the preferred way of creating objects in PowerShell. So here we're casting a hash table as a PS object or a PS custom object. So let's go ahead and I did this one especially for you.
Yeah. Oh, come on, man. It was West Australian engine with variable round typing. It wasn't that bad.
So essentially what we've got here is basically we're typecasting and a hash table. So do you guys, is everyone across what I'm actually doing here? So what let's break it down a little further. We have a hash table here. So within a hash table, you have your key values. So essentially within our hash table, we have our name equals description. These are just our property. Our left-hand side are our properties. Our right-hand side are our values for those properties. That's literally it. It makes it way easier for readability. When you just look at that, I'm like, yep, I know it's a PowerShell object and I don't see add member, which, it makes it, it's a little bit like splatting, except, actually it is much like splatting, except.
Yeah, I mean, splatting is nothing but.
Yeah, it's a hash table.
Hash table.
Yeah, with the exception that basically we're casting it. So when you actually see we've got PS custom object in front of that hash table, we're basically saying, hey, no, I want to be a PS custom object, and it'll just typecast it as an object perfectly. Yep, it's great. I love it.
So what do you think if it was a PS object versus just a hash table?
So this is a hash table here,
Yeah.
and then in front of it, you see how I've got the type PS custom object. This is the type. I'm basically saying when I'm creating this, it'll create the hash table, and then it will actually typecast it as a PS custom object. So it's basically say, create me a hash table, now convert it to a PS custom object for me.
So that turns
All the hash table key values. Yep.
Into our members.
Yep.
No problem.
Yep. Yep. And then you don't have to deal with all the add members and that kind of jazz. It's really quite cool.
The other benefit of this one over add member is you actually can see exactly what node properties you have in the objects, whereas add members, you might have it up here, you might have it down there, and you're trying to reconcile as to, okay, what am I actually going to get out here?
Yeah,
well,
imagine,
now you can actually see it.
Imagine adding 20 objects, like 20 properties.
Yeah, exactly.
20 times,
It really comes down to readability and maintainability. The easier it is for us to be able to actually read someone else's code, the easier it is. It makes everyone else's lives easier.
They are node properties, they're not integers and strings.
You cast them however you want.
Oh, but those individual properties now, if you run this, they will be node properties, not integers and strings.
So they're node properties, but the node property has a value, which is your strings, your integers, and stuff like that.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and we'll go ahead and get the property. So
It's not
you can have a property which doesn't have a value.
so
Sorry? Yeah, it is.
So, oops. This is why you should have done the review, because you'd be like, no, we're not doing that. It's out. So you can see here, we've got our Ford Falcon AU. We've got the description. And basically, it's a full-blown object, and we can actually have a look at that.
This would not make it.
You can see it's a type PS custom object, so it's an object. We can use it. And you can see there's our node properties. It's all good to go. Now, what's the really cool thing is, so obviously we can.
There's the definition actually says the strings.
Yeah. And then we can go, let's just have a look at the description. I just want to read the description. So obviously Ford spent $600 million to build it and immediately failed as plain ugly. It also blew head gaskets, radiators, and thermostats, yet there's a lot of AU taxis limping around. I think my dad gave up his AU after a little while. But anyway, so yeah, as your objects, which it's super easy to use. It's really, really great. So let's accessing object properties. Okay, so as you can see here, we're basically creating our obviously we're creating a hash table, and we're basically creating a PSObject custom object, what we did before. And you can see here, one of the really cool things we can actually do is we can create a property with a space in it. Now, not recommended, however, you will come across it. I've come across it in RSS feeds. You're going to basically, when you're deserializing from XML, you're going to see things with properties with spaces in it. And so how do we deal with that? Like, that's really the question. So let's go ahead and we can run this again. And let's go ahead and look at it. Oh, goodness. So let's go have a little look at the object. So we'll go ahead and clear the screen. And you can see here, now we've got car space name as our property. So if we just do a quick get member, you can see there, that's a legitimate space. So what we can actually do to access that property is we can actually encapsulate within a string. So I'll just quickly, and this is really quite cool. So you can see here we've got object space dot car name. So you can actually wrap your property names in a string. You can do some very cool things with this. Really cool things like you can dynamically build your objects. So if let's say you have a actually not a hash table because you just typecast it. Let's say you have some random .NET class, random .NET object that you need to actually grab some properties and put them in. You can actually do that dynamically if they have spaces in it. So you can just basically write a for each object, and you can actually you can do things like that. So it's really quite cool. It makes
Can you encapsulate an object within an object?
Yes, object section. Though PowerShell runs faster, which is weird, because and then sometimes like when it's like 3 times deep, then time runs really fast and everything kind of. Just stop with my terrible jokes. No one's like, everyone's lost with my jokes.
No one's lost. Everyone's embarrassed.
So essentially, Yeah, so it's really quite handy to know that you can wrap your properties within a string and you can still get your properties out. So that's really, really quite cool. So let's keep going.
By the way, I do that a lot.
Wait, you do not?
Yes,
I should get it up right now.
Yeah. Come on, let's try it.
Bring us your torch. We'll cue the Survivor music.
I've got a legit
reason
reason
we'll
for
throw
it.
them stairs.
I've got a legit reason for it because I mean, sometimes the BI team they do not like certain things.
The Power BI
Sounds like
team,
a
yeah.
The analytics team, they want it different.
Yeah.
That's definitely
Okay.
You know when you can do it. I'm pretty sure you can like just do a SQL query and just select as.
Oh yeah. Let's see, even Power BI
Yeah.
supports all of the transformation features where you can add a space,
Hmm.
but they being lazy, they just want it that way.
It just makes things so much harder. Like, querying, you need to quote it and all that.
All right. Anyway, so one of the really cool things is PowerShell Objects and the web. So we talked about this a little bit earlier before we actually started the talk. So let's just use this example. So we've got get process. It's probably my favorite commandlet to use for demos because I know it's never going to break. And we can have a look at the type. So let's have a quick look at the type.
Why are you using the get type method instead of having the get type?
I'm just using it for easy use. But you can use get member. I just kind of was like literally just. You can use you can use one or the other. So it's basically just a type names process. So it's a process. So let's go back and we can have a look. Now let's serialize this into JSON. So let's go ahead and run this. And let's have a look at our JSON. So is everyone here familiar with convert to JSON? Yep, cool. It's like, is everyone here familiar with convert to base 64? It doesn't exist, I'm just trolling you.
Base 64.
I
suppose it's .NET.
Yeah, it's .NET, but I was like, I just wanted to see how many
What
people.
is this secure string conversion? Isn't it base 64?
It's a base 64.
It's a base.
Scripted quality.
Yeah, it's a base 64. Yeah.
So that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
I was doing it earlier today.
But yeah, no, I was just trolling because I know that's like one of my biggest gripes. But you can see here. Anyway, it's JSON, so we've got a serialized. We've got serialized code. Also, a serialized object is JSON. As you can see, it's quite extensive. So, it's a string. It's just that's all good. So let's go ahead and deserialize it. And what we're going to do is we're just going to deserialize it into a variable PSObject, and we're going to actually have a look at the type again. So let's take a look while I can learn how to control my mouse skills. So now if we have a look at that, you can see it's actually type PS custom object. So when it deserializes from JSON, it'll serialize as a PS custom object. Now this is really quite handy, especially when you're interacting with any sort of web APIs or anything like that. You do not need to worry about type. That's the one thing you do not need to worry about. Invoke REST method will basically do that for you, which is really, really quite good.
I think this is the same case when you're bringing objects from a remote system. So
Yeah.
While it's serializing in your system,
Yep.
it would serialize as a custom object.
Yeah, I think, yeah. So let's remove a property. So we've got our Reliant Robin here again. So let's go ahead and reload this in memory. And let's go and have a look at what I've got here in terms of notes. So the first way we can actually remove an object, like I said before, is we can use select object. Now, is everyone familiar with select object? So obviously, we can basically use select object and then selecting the objects that we want. So I'm just going to go ahead, paste that in, and then we're going to get a smaller file path to prevent VS Code from breaking. So again, I'll just run that. And you can see here, we've only selected the name and the description. So, you know, that's fairly common for select object. We're just selecting our properties, all good.
So the object creates a new.
It technically does create a new, but the one thing is that with select objects is it preserves type. So essentially use whatever object that you're using. So if you're using a process, process, or it will still preserve that type. So it's not going to create a new custom object. It's just it'll still preserve the type of the parent. Now we can be implicit with that. So we can basically just go select object, property name, description.
Is that true?
I think.
What's your
So if you do a get process select object property name, is it still a process object?
Yeah, I checked because I was writing a demo and I thought it was the other way around, and I'm like, it's not.
Does it did you guys, why would you say that it reinstantiates it?
Yes.
Yes, it recreates it
It's
technically.
It's a new object.
Yeah.
Like select object is a new object.
Yeah, it technically reinstantiates the object. Yeah.
But I still don't know why would it preserve the parent object.
Because it's type. Because think of it as from like a usability point of view. If you're actually working with, for example, ADUs, like let's say Active Directory user, and you have a commandlet that you're piping. Let's say you go get AD user, pipe it to select object, select name, SAM account name, for example, and then you pipe it to get mailbox. Okay, hypothetically, you don't need to use the select object. You can just pipe it. But if there's a type, if get mailbox is actually looking at the type rather than the property name, then you're in trouble. So that's the reason why. So
by type name, I think.
Yeah, by type name. Yeah. So you can be explicit as well. So with select object, what you can do is you can actually use the exclude property parameter. However, there's a catch with exclude property parameter. And the catch is you have to actually have all the properties declared within the property parameter. So it's kind of a bit of a weird thing. So essentially here you can see I've got my property parameter. I've just wildcarded every property within that object. And then I'm actually physically excluding the properties from that. Now, you can see here, I'm excluding wheels, number of windows, and engines. So we can go ahead and run that. So yeah, that's what's remaining. So basically, it's a different way of doing it. Now, why would we want to do this? And the really cool thing is that with select object, you can use wildcards. So you could see here earlier, we can use wildcards. So if you actually don't know the property name, its entire property name, you can actually just wildcard it. And this is one of the really powerful things about select object. So let's go back to select object and let's actually grab every object that contains with the property name containing in. And I think that's going to be, it'll be engine and number of windows. So if we go ahead and run that, you can see we've got number of windows and engines. So you can actually use wildcarding to actually get that information out. And that's one of the really cool reasons why exclude property kind of exists, because you can go, I want to wildcard these items out. So we can actually, I'll show you that.
So it's basically property was selected and exclude properties just a further filter.
Correct. That's exactly right. So you can see here, let's go ahead and we're going to select, same thing, we're just going to select everything within, and then we're going to exclude the property INE. So that'll basically exclude engine. So the only property we'll get back is number of windows. So if we go ahead and run that, you can see that's the only thing we get back. So it's really quite cool in the sense that we can actually use wildcard.
The property name, not the property value.
It's the property name, yes. So it's really quite cool, especially when you're looking through large lists of, without having to go to get member, and you kind of got a bit of an idea of what it is. Like, it's email something, but I don't know what exactly it is. You can just type in, select object, email, star, get me everything with the with email in it. So that's one of the really cool things I love about select object.
You can use select object to add properties.
Yes,
well.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah. So we can also use PSObjects.properties.remove method. And we should just move on to the next one. So we can actually, within every PowerShell object, there is an actual PSObject. I don't know what you call it. It's like essentially it's just a...
It's like the metadata.
Yeah, it's like the metadata for the object. And it has methods in there where you can actually add that information. So let's look at, for example, let's reprint out...
Methods don't show up when you do it, like a get member or something.
No, it doesn't show up in get member.
Get property.
So if we go, let's just go clear the screen, and then I'm just going to print out object again, if I can actually type CLS, and we can type an object. So here you can see here, I'm just going to bring that up. So here you can see we've got our object. So we've got our Reliant Robin, we've got our description, wheels, number of windows, engine. So let's go ahead and execute our remove. So essentially we can call this method, which is the remove method, and we can just specify the property name of what we want to remove. So essentially we can go ahead and run that, and we can go ahead and call it again. And you can see now, no, I think it's because description is kind of, yeah, the description was,
That's too big.
yeah, and I also knocked it. Don't break, please don't break. Please, okay, cool. I'm just not gonna touch that. So essentially, you can remove properties that way. It's kind of similar to hash tables. So if you've ever used hash tables before, you can do the same thing. You can do that. It's very programming-y, like it's not very PowerShell-y. So.
It's similar to the remove member.
Sorry.
Is it similar to the remove member command?
Remove member would be using that.
Yeah. So another thing we can do is we can obviously print out an object again, which we've done that. And we can remove name, which we've done that. Cool. So now we've got object variables. I actually never knew about remove member.
Really?
Yeah.
I think it's the first time I've heard that.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah,
That's
I've
weird.
been using PowerShell for that.
Yeah, I've been using PowerShell and I've never heard of a remove member. And then I'm like, I actually should know it because.
You don't make mistakes, one.
No,
Yeah.
that's right.
You
Yeah.
have to remove it.
But we always learn, yeah.
That's right. That's right.
I'm glad it's not just me, but I'm like, I've never heard of remove member.
Well,
Yeah.
remove member is very slow as compared to adding or removing members in a hash table.
Ah, okay.
So the best thing is like you create your hash table first.
Yep.
You can remove or add to the hash table.
Yep.
Then at the end you create the object and print it out.
Okay.
You wouldn't
Yep.
use remove member on a hash table. You would use the hash table's methods that remove.
Yeah, it's got its own methods, yeah.
That's what I meant. So you can add or remove it.
All right, so I quickly want to talk to you about object variables because this is something that's really important when we talk about objects. So let's take a copy of our object. So what I'm going to do is we've just declared, I've just instantiated this. We got object in memory. We're going to take a copy of object and we're going to update the name. So we're going to change the name. Now I use the word, you can see I've got that in quotes. There's a reason why. So there's a catch to this. Now let's print out the name. Let's go ahead and do that. Is that, can you guys at the back see the code? Is that okay? Okay, cool. I'm just a little concerned because it's so small. So you can see here, we've got new name down the bottom here. Obviously it looks good. Everything looks good. Let's go print out the other object. It's updated. This is really important with objects in PowerShell. Variables within objects will still hold a reference to the actual object.
So the original object is also changed.
Yes.
So it's the same memory set.
Yes, they hold the same reference. So if you assign another object and you basically make whatever changes you have, it still has a reference to the parent or to the other object. That's real.
This copy is basically instantiating the same object.
It's not even instantiating. It's not technically instantiating the same object because it's kind of, it has a more of a reference.
Yeah, so
New
both
object
object and new object have
Yeah.
pointed to the same thing in the internal memory.
Yeah. So the question is, how do we make a copy? So when you're actually wanting to copy an object, what do you do? So within PSObject, there's a copy. There's a copy method. So if you want to clone your actual object properly, make sure you use this because, or you could just re-instantiate the whole thing. So if we go ahead and rerun that, I'll just quickly clear the screen so we're all good. And let's just change it, the new name to something else. So we're going to print out the new name now. You can see that's something else. And now let's go print out the other object. And you can see that's completely different as well. So if you're wanting to copy your object, you need to make sure you use you need to use the copy method or you are going to have issues. That has bit me in the bum. So
we have two objects physically.
correct. You have two physical objects separate and there's no references.
It's the same for pretty much any non-primitive type, so things that aren't strings, integers, stuff
Yep.
like that. If you pass it into a function, it it's still the original variable. So I can pass a PSObject to a function. That function edits one of the properties, and that also applies to the caller's variable as well.
So one of the things, we can add properties. So we've got our user group. Obviously, it was creating a new object called user group, and we're going to use select object expressions. Who here's heard of select expressions? Okay, so select expressions allows you to recreate an existing object, and you can add additional properties. This is select expressions will change the way you do select statements, because you can basically do whatever you want with it, literally whatever you want. So select expressions are denoted by a hash table with the key and the keys name and expression. Now you can shortcut them to N and E. I've seen some other instances of other things, but essentially I actually personally just keep it name as an expression because it's just easier to understand.
I actually always had this syntax.
Yeah, label and you can use label as well.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, it was like something along those lines. Okay. So here we've got user group, and then we're basically I'm just obviously got user group $user equals $user group, and then we're selecting object. We're selecting everything within that user group. Within the object user group, and we're getting anything to do with names. So we're basically just selecting the user group name property. And then here after that, you can see, okay, the first thing you notice is that we're obviously denoted by the comma. We're basically, that's
adding another member.
It's basically specifying another property. Here we've denoted our hash table.
Property as well. You can add different properties as well.
Yeah. So what we can do here is we've denoted our hash table, and you can see here we're using name equals user group description. Then we're basically ending that specific statement with a semicolon. So anytime you're using a hash table on a single line, you have to end it with a semicolon. That's C#.
And the expression can go on the next line.
Yes, and you can break this down, so you can make this multi-line. The expression is again the same thing. Now note that it's basically within a curly brace, so that's just a script block.
And by the way, you can have literally a huge, massive.
Yep, you can write whatever you want. You can basically write command. Let's go. Okay, go get 80 user. Blah blah blah. Do this. That's literally where the power of
call function.
You can do whatever you want.
Yes, you can call functions as long as it returns an object.
Yep, you can do whatever you want as long as it returns. And so one of the real big use cases for it was, and if you look at the examples online, is it really comes down to they used it to filter. So if you're looking at, for example, using get child item, and you're looking at a whole bunch of files on your file server, and then you look at the file size and it's in bytes, and you're thinking, man, I'd really like to see that in gigabytes. You can use select expressions to format the output into gigabytes. So you don't have to write this convoluted script. You can basically just use a select expression and then basically go, by 10264, by 10264, or by 102464.
1024.
Yeah, 1024, 1024, 1024.
Right.
And then you can, and so essentially you can have.
And then use a math operator to round it up.
No, I'm too late. But essentially you can use that to be able to actually obviously simplify your systems administration. That's what it's there for. It makes it really easy to do things. Highly recommend you checking it out because it's one of those easy things. But the easiest thing to take home from it, if you're thinking about a select expression, is it's a hash table that contains name. That's the property name and the expression.
That's a property name that already exists, right?
No, it can be.
Yeah.
You can do select name, and then you can literally add different property names to it.
Yeah, you can add. Yeah. So let's go ahead and run it. So what we've done is I've run this code now. So let's go and actually have a look at it. So let's.
And by the way, you can use where it is written name. You can literally use N as well. You don't have to type.
You don't have to type the full thing. You can abbreviate it. So essentially, you can just go N and E.
Yeah.
You're not stuck with that. So there you go. There we go. And then we've added our user group description with the Brisbane PowerShell User Group. So it's a really, really quick and handy way to be able to add those kinds of functionality. But it's really, obviously, its true power lies in the ability that you can run whatever you want.
Was there a previous property in there called name? No.
There was a user group name that we instantiated up the top. So, but user group description was added as a as an expression. So you can see here, this is where I instantiated it.
Yeah.
and then here, that's where I'm actually adding the property user group description as an expression.
And the
The
expression used.
existing one was, so the user group name was picked up because he's got the star name.
Yeah. So it's really quite handy.
In list format, not.
Yeah. So yes, you can break this down. So obviously we'll just backtick that up, and you can obviously make it a little bit easier to read.
No, you don't need a backtake after the comma.
I don't.
Yeah, no.
I just thought it would have a. Oh, we'll find out. I thought you always did, but if you don't, then thank you. Good.
You can also create property as an actual array. So instead of that implicit array that you've got there, you do the array and then you've got commas as well.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, splatting is 100% better than backticks.
Oh, 100%.
You don't need backticks when you're having a pipe or a comma or something semicolon.
I thought you needed backticks. Oh no, you don't need backticks when it's inside the parameter itself. But if you're actually declaring, if you're declaring a parameter, actually no, never mind.
If you were to add exclude
yes.
property,
Yeah.
you need a backtick.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. Okay, so again, yeah, so that's essentially your multi-line.
Another reason why backticks are shit.
Obviously, we have add member. So obviously, let's go back to the old days. I always like to revisit the old days, but at the same time, though, it's just if you need to use it, you can use it. Like there's no bad thing about it. It's just that it's there. If you need to use something in a hurry, then just go ahead and use it. Ultimately, I'm not going to say you know demons and hell on earth for you. It's more just there is better ways to doing it. So
one of the things you showed, Michael, was creating the object with a hash table.
yeah.
The few instances I've used add member was actually in situations where I didn't know how many members I needed to add, and it was based on some input. And in fact, it was actually a licensing script I wrote to write out how many licenses the user had inside Office 365.
Yeah.
So I only added the members based on how many licenses I saw. So I didn't have a hash table knowledge of how big the hash table had to be at the start. So
Which is right, and that is where hash tables are really good. So what happens is like in let's say if you do not know how many properties you would end up with, you can use the add method in the hash table, and at the end, once you're finished, that's when you create an object out.
Yeah, so you could actually dynamically build the hash table and then just cast it.
Yes.
Yeah, that's one of the really cool things.
And you can even do that with, let's say, you are creating for a command line. Let's say you do not know what properties you want to say, what parameters you would select. Based on the user input, you can always have the key value pair, which would be the hash table, and then at the end of the day, you can splat it like you can use it.
Yeah, so add member, not recommended, but you can still use it. So yeah, and obviously you can dynamically build cool things with PowerShell with hash tables. So let's go ahead and run this. Same old days. Obviously we're using add member, member type no property, location. Our name is the property name is location, and then the value is Hudson Technology. Obviously there's one catch with add member. If you want to pass add member's output back into the pipeline, you need to use the pass-through parameter. That's a big one. So if you don't, it won't return anything. It returns zilch. So obviously, do I need to really explain add member anymore? I don't really. Okay, so the final one is, which is Jordan's favorite. That's right. So we can use the PSObject properties.add method. Now this is a little bit more complicated than the remove method because you actually need to specify a type. So here we've basically casted a systems.management.automation.psno property, and we can go ahead and actually physically create that with the key value.
You create a new instance then?
That is not a new instance.
That's a new instance.
That's a new instance of a property, yes. But essentially it's just a property that you're adding. So yeah. So if we go ahead and run that, F8, and then we can type in user group. You can see there's our location and presenter. So that, sorry, I'm fiddling around, and that pretty much concludes all the demos. Is there any questions? Obviously, I'll just blow that up. So if you want to get to the slides,
We can even create a PSObject by specifying a class.
yes. So you can specify the type class and then go new. The only reason why I didn't want to do that was a little bit.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that again? Sorry.
So you can create an empty class. Let's say you create a class name, whatever, and then you can specify properties.
Yeah.
You instantiate an empty class and keep on adding. So that one example was in the PowerShell conference book.
Yes. So essentially, you can go PS custom object, and then you can call the new method, and then create your object that way. I didn't really want to include it because I thought it was a little bit. Now,
I don't get it. Like,
so like you create a class, like you define the properties of the attributes of the class.
Like a car or doors or whatever.
Exactly,
Stuff,
and then you just
when you say class here, what do you mean?
You mean
Are you
PowerShell
talking about an actual .NET class?
no PowerShell class.
Okay.
So you say class, and then you say, let's say it's a car, and then you have the attributes like empty doors, engine, manufacturer, model, whatever. So that's
Done.
It's empty. Either you can add a constructor, like when you instantiate a class, it would have certain attributes, or you can just leave it empty. Like when we have the
Or use the
custom
default constructor.
Exactly. Yeah. So or use default constructor, and then later on you can, as you go through your logic in the code, you can keep adding the properties.
Really?
So that one example was the PowerShell conference.
How?
One.
How do you do that?
Because you convert the class to a PS object.
Oh.
yeah.
Well, see, class dot make is equal to whatever. That can be done, and then at the end of the day, you can just
You can add node properties and all that other type of stuff to like .NET classes right now.
Yeah.
So even if you do like get item, you have like your file name, stuff like that. But then there's also like PS is container, PS path, stuff like that. They're actually node properties sitting on top of the .NET object itself.
Does anyone else have any questions?
I've been in the scripting world for a long time.
Yep.
I know the PowerShell is a scripting language. Why we are trying to make it as a programming language?
Oh well, it is.
A programming language we are trying to make it more scripting. So
Yeah,
let the scripting framework be a scripting framework for the purpose. Why we are trying to over-engineering it?
I mean, people like to make themselves
And look, they
clever.
want to say,
I think
they want to
there's a
say,
good
oh, we
reason.
can do this in PowerShell as well.
No,
Yeah.
well, so there's a very good case study for this. Like, let's say, yes, it is a scripting language, and you would ideally want to keep it more functional. But then it's not just like any other traditional scripting language. I mean, it delves into DSC resources where everything is built on classes. So when you use these sort of things, you then would also learn to work with DSC classes. So it's not about right and wrong, but it just
My
provides.
way of working is this. I'm in IT for a very long time. Something immediately I can deliver it. You have got a knowledge of scripting, somebody has got a knowledge of something else. Get all the bits and pieces together, let's deliver it. Do it quickly. Whatever you have good in.
They both would not take.
And as long as you are quickly able to deliver the results.
Yeah, so they both would, like, in terms of time as well. It's not like one is really time consuming versus the other. Like regardless of whether you use classes or whether you use a PS custom object, like new object, it all comes down to the preference, I guess.
I mean, it's okay. It's a good start, and I think.
Yeah. So
So if someone can understand programming, they can undo scripting. There's a common point where they keep on meeting.
Yeah.
And they can exchange.
So
I'm
it's-
seeing that a lot.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's not about like this is the right way of doing it versus this is the wrong way of doing it. It's just like you have multiple ways of doing it.
Organizations, culture, resources available, expertise available. That's what it is.
So I've got a bit of a giveaway that I want to kind of get rid of out of my house.
Sounds great.
So this was from the scripting games that no one ever played. So so I've just got a number between 1 and 4. Pablo and Wayne are excluded.
Fair enough. I mean, I would win.
So what we're going to do is we're just going to go 1. No.
Yeah, you've been learning PowerShell.
Yeah.
I'm at the end of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is we basically just go from 1 to 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And we'll just whoever's the lucky winner.
Where was the one? Sorry, where was the two?
So we've got 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now before that, anyone else got questions?
Are we okay with that code? Minimum 1, maximum 4?
Oh man. Okay, so let's go ahead and just hit that. So number 3, that's Jordan. Congratulations. Yeah.
Yay, well done.
With some EK water cooling stuff.
Wow, thank you very much.
Congratulations. So yeah, guys. If you
Might come
there's
in handy given it was like 37 degrees today. With 100%
Yeah.
humidity. Yeah.
well, it would only work at ambient room. That's the only problem. So like the moment you start in, if you go colder than like ambient, then like you get condensation, and then things get bad. But that's only when you start chilling. But so guys, if you liked it, obviously we've got the slides up. I will upload the most recent copy. All the demos are there as well, so you can just jump on my GitHub. That's my Twitter if you want to follow me.
I'm up next month.
Yep. So Wayne's up next month. He'll be talking about. Oh, thank you. Wayne's talking about
Scripting, writing scripts.
Yes, writing scripts.
Designing scripts.
designing and writing scripts. So
I did.
definitely recommend Wayne's talk because Wayne's actually a much better speaker than me.
Arms template, etc.
Sorry?
Arms template, etc. You can talk about sometimes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we can add that. That's fine. We're just kind of wanting to really kind of take it back to basics and then we'll kind of rebuild it back up. But yeah, anyway, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed it. And thank you. Arrivederci. Bye-bye.